Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm so glad you all were able to make it. Today, we are going to be talking about certain aspects of caring for elderly loved ones from a distance. I'm so excited to introduce Nola Hastings, who is the Elder Care Coach Program Manager for AgeWell of Middle Tennessee. And they have been a great partner with us for many, many years now. So with that in mind, I'm going to hand it off to Nola to introduce our panelists. Nola?
Okay, great. Thank you, Katie, and thank you all for joining AgeWell's Navigating Elder Care webinar today. We do have two fantastic panelists who are going to address the topic of caring from a distance. Let's see. Okay, you went to the next slide. We're going to do the next slide thing today. So during this webinar, can you go back one? During this webinar, you'll learn about the support that's available through AgeWell Middle Tennessee. You'll hear from Cheryl Blanchard, who is with Alzheimer's Tennessee, about she'll provide information on how to care for a loved one that doesn't live nearby. And really importantly, how to take care of yourself in the process. And if there's a local caregiver, maybe you have family that's closer to that aging loved one, how you can support them. Paula Daigle is here with us. Paula's with AgeWell, and she will share her experience caring for loved ones who live in another state. I'll also show you how to access AgeWell's Elder Care Coach program and our resources. We will leave time for questions and answers at the end. So please access the chat box if you want to put any questions there. So next slide, please. AgeWell, I'm going to tell you a little bit. I don't know if you're familiar with AgeWell Middle Tennessee, but it is a nonprofit organization. We have been in the Nashville area for more than 35 years, going on 36 years. We are a trusted resource, a champion for older adults and family caregivers. We are local, obviously, we've been in Nashville. And really importantly, we're unbiased. So the information that you get from AgeWell Middle Tennessee doesn't support any organizations that are out there in the aging space. So it's all unbiased information. We have a variety of educational resources. You can see some of these on the slide here, our directory of services. You can get a printed copy if you like books, or if you're okay accessing information online. All of these guides and the directory of services are all online as well at AgeWell's website. Thanks to sponsors and grants, we can provide all of these resources at no cost. So let's talk for just a minute about elder care and what that means. You're on this webinar, so you probably have some idea, but sometimes people don't necessarily identify as a caregiver because they're only offering help sporadically. Maybe they're just every now and then driving their parent or spouse to the doctor. But over time, the needs might increase, and then the caregiver is spending more time providing care. So on the next slide, we'll see who today's caregivers are. Probably not surprisingly, over 60% of today's caregivers are women, and over 60% of elder caregivers work either full-time or part-time. And studies are showing that caregiving can have serious economic impacts on earning potential, particularly for women. Sometimes you might have to take time off of work, or some people quit work altogether. But also on this slide, you can see that caregiving touches all generations. Gen X, those are people born in the mid-1960s to the early 1980s. Millennials, born between 1981 and 1996. These are people we would consider, fairly young. And even Gen Zs, those are people born after 1997. Those groups are making up almost 60% of all caregivers. So recognizing the need for caregiver support, go to the next slide, please. AgeWell developed the Elder Care Coach program. And the program brings together a variety of resources into a single source of information. So I've dealt with caregiving. Paula's here on the webinar. She has as well. And I know what it feels like to be looking for information or assistance or whatever it is. You may not even know what you need. I know when I started that journey, I didn't know what I needed. So you spend a lot of time just trying to research and find out what it is you're looking for. So Elder Care Coach brings all of this into one place. We also provide personalized support and care navigation assistance. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Expert guidance and trusted, unbiased information. Next slide, please. So in addition to some of the free resources that we kind of mentioned already, the guidebooks and the directory, we offer access to Rubric tool, which is an online, about 5-minute survey that you can take to kind of help you get started in what direction it is you may need to go. And we have a helpline. That's obviously a free resource as well. The Elder Care Coach adds additional services. So we have the Care Coach consults, and we have another slide. We can talk a little bit more in depth about that. The online portal, which is eldercarecoach.org. We offer lunch and learns like we're doing today, and employer best practices. So one of our other goals is to help employers have a better understanding of how to support their employees who are caregiving. Next slide, please. So we know that caregiving is a challenging journey, and by offering this webinar, your employer is providing education and support to help alleviate some of your stress. So we're very grateful for that. So I do invite you to visit eldercarecoach.org to access these resources that are available online. Here you can schedule a phone consultation. You can watch our elder care video series. It's a 6 approximately 15-minute videos that address topics that are important to caregivers. So jot that down. Feel free to visit that website. Next slide, please. We're going to go into introductions. So Cheryl Blanchard is here today from Alzheimer's Tennessee. Cheryl is a licensed social worker, certified dementia care specialist, and a certified case manager. She's worked with seniors throughout Tennessee for several years in a variety of roles and has focused most of her training on caring for those with Alzheimer's disease and their families. Cheryl has written training programs for senior living staff. She speaks on Alzheimer's related topics throughout the state. And she recently joined Alzheimer's Tennessee as the regional director for the Middle Tennessee area. So she's local for us now. Cheryl, take it away.
All right, thank you. Let's see, can I share my screen? There we go. Pull this up, change that to presentation mode, and we shall be good to go. I just got to find where I am. All right, here we go. Can we make that bigger on my end? There we go. All right, great. So I thank you guys for inviting me. It's always great to be with AgeWell and partner with Caregiver Coach. So I'm going to be talking a little about caregiving from a distance, especially caring for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease, and some of the steps that you might be able to take. You know, caregiving can be tough. We know that caregiving can be a very stressful thing. Caregiving from a distance is even more difficult. Now you're dealing with, mom has to go to the hospital and you are 6, 7, 8 hours away, or maybe even across the country. And that's a very, very common situation for families now. So one of the biggest things that we encourage you to do is be prepared. You know, we never want to think about something bad happening to a loved one, but if you're not prepared and something does happen, now you're in crisis mode and you're trying to figure out everything, make all the plans and get everything in order. And sometimes that's a fairly difficult thing to do. So some of the things that you can do to be prepared would be things like making copies of everything that you might need for your loved one, their medical history, even a medication record. Often families that live at a distance don't even know what medications their loved ones are taking. You want to have the doctor's contact information in case you need to reach them, and then copies of their Medicare or insurance cards. You also want to make sure you know how to locate important documents. Maybe put those in a firebox or put them in a a file where you know where they are. Make copies of them if you want to keep those with you. Things like passwords and account numbers. If you are trying to help with your family and everything is online, you know how difficult that can be if you forget your password. Imagine trying to do something for your parents or other loved ones and you don't even know any of the passwords. So go ahead and know those online passwords. Keep those handy where you can get to those if you need them. You may want to speak to an elder law attorney or even a financial planner about putting your loved ones' affairs in a manageable way. Do you need to be their personal durable power of attorney? Do you need to have a medical power of attorney? Do they need a will? Is there estate planning that needs to be done? So all of those things are important to have in place as well. And then always have that emergency information current and handy. Maybe you have a neighbor, maybe there's a family member that lives close by that says, hey, you know, I can't handle everything, but if you need me in a pinch, I'll run over there. They can get there a lot faster than you can. Have those numbers handy because again, when you are in a crisis situation or something needs to be done for your loved one, sometimes you're thinking about so many things at once, you can't even think about who it is you want to call. So keep that in a list, keep a separate emergency contact list, even apart from having these people in your phone. You might even want to arrange for e-bills. One of the things that families notice when they go and visit a loved one that lives across the country or in another state is there stacks of bills laying around that haven't gotten paid. So if you want to help with that, it's easier than ever now. You don't even have to change the mailing address for the bill. Just set everything up on e-bill and you can manage things like rent or mortgage payments, insurance payments, utilities, and all of that, no matter where you live. And something that simple can really make a big difference. Something else we encourage you to do if you live far away from your loved one and they do have Alzheimer's disease or related dementia, is get in touch with us to get your Silver Alert Kit. The Silver Alert is what notifies the community that an elder person has gone missing. Alzheimer's Tennessee has put together a kit called the Silver Alert Kit. It's in a little purple waterproof pouch like that. And it's a place where you can keep everything that you would need to have should a loved one wander and you need to reach out to law enforcement to report them missing. So do get in touch with us and go ahead and get that completed. If you do have other loved ones closer, maybe you're better at handling the medical problems and somebody else is better at managing financial and paying bills. There's no reason for only one family member to be in charge of everything. And really, it helps it be less overwhelming when you're not. So if you've got some siblings that live closer, maybe they can be responsible for getting mom, dad, or whoever to the doctor, and you might be responsible for handling all the financial pieces or handling other information. So divide those up. If you live at a distance and you do have a sibling or someone else who is here providing care, please be supportive of that local caregiver. And that can be in a number of ways, but one of the biggest ways is not accidentally calling into question every decision they make. One of the big things we hear from the caregiver that's the primary caregiver is that loved ones who live out of state will call and question everything that they're doing and tell them that they ought to do this or ought to do that. So just keep in mind when someone else is there and doing the day-to-day care, they're doing everything they can to make proper decisions. And it feels real frustrating to have someone who doesn't live there questioning everything. Asking questions for information is fine, but supporting them, finding out why decisions were made and how you can help is great. You also want to talk with your other family members about what is the long-term living situation and talk about that well before you need to make that decision. You know, is it possible that mom or dad are going to move to your state and come and live with you? Is it possible that they're going to live with someone else? Is someone going to move into their home? Do you need to hire in-home care, or do you need to think about the possibility of moving them to an assisted living or a memory care community? So all of that preparation in advance will be very, very helpful if you do need to make some of these decisions. We also encourage you to make sure you're connected with the community where your loved one lives. So reach out to neighbors and church friends, just say, hey, just keep an eye on mom. If you notice anything that seems unusual, let us know. For example, if the mail is in the mailbox for days, or if your mom is normally one who goes out in the yard and walks around and nobody has seen her for a few days, ask folks to pay attention and give you a call. If you have a loved one that lives alone and you're concerned about them wandering or getting lost, you want to go ahead and notify local authorities. And again, notify some of the neighbors and folks and say, look, mom has dementia. Sometimes she gets turned around. This is what she looks like. This is where she should be. This is how to contact me. Just go ahead and let them know. You also might want to consider hiring in-home care. And there are a lot of agencies across the country and places you can reach out to get list of those. And we'll tell you about some of those in just a minute. And learning about other local resources. Are there resources for transportation? Are there any volunteer visitation programs where somebody will just go out and check on your loved one? What about someone to help them make sure that they've got healthy meals in the home? One of the things that is a service that a lot of families that live away from a loved one use is a geriatric care manager. Geriatric care manager are people who are trained to provide care for seniors. They know the resources, they know what that senior needs, and they kind of act as an additional arm, leg, set of eyes and ears for you. So you hire this person, they can help with doctor's appointments, managing medications, keeping an eye on your loved one. They can even get involved with helping with financial issues, making sure bills get paid and things like that. So that's something to consider. The volunteer visitation programs, sometimes senior centers or area agencies on aging and disability have those. In some communities, the sheriff's office actually has a visitation program where they'll send someone out to check on a senior who lives alone. Some communities have what they call assurance calls, and they just have a program where every few days they've got volunteers who will call and just check on a person who is living alone. So you want to check your loved one's community to see if that is available. Mobile meals is great because not only does it make sure that the person has a hot meal daily and frozen meals for the weekend, but they're also somebody knocking on your loved one's door every day and laying eyes on them. And I have heard a number of stories. One, I was actually going out to visit a patient where the mobile meals delivery person got there and the person wouldn't come to the door. And they were able to yell at them and find out they had fallen, could not get up, and they had already called an ambulance before I even got to the house. So that's outstanding, just having that extra person kind of checking in and making sure things are going okay. SHIP in the state of Tennessee, at least, is the state health insurance program that can help you understand insurance in the state where your loved one lives. If it's not called SHIP in your state, then or your parent state, then find out what that is. There are usually counseling programs that can explain Medicare, Medicaid, private insurance, Medicare supplements, and all that. And you want to make sure you understand what type of insurance your loved one has. Nothing's more frustrating than finding out they need a doctor and trying to schedule that from another state and then trying to figure out if they have to use someone in network or what that looks like. Hiring in-home caregivers is something that a lot of long distance caregivers do. And that just lets you know that somebody is there at least a few hours a week, making sure your loved one is okay, maybe preparing meals, taking care of the house, and doing other things that you can't do from a distance. If you decide that you may want to place your loved one into an assisted living community, that's a tough thing to do from a distance too. But there are services that will act sort of like a real estate agent for assisted living and memory care facilities. They are outstanding at what they do. They will listen to you, what you're looking for, what area you want your parent to live in, and they will go on those visits. They'll send you information and really guide you through making that decision. So those are some folks you might want to get connected with too. There's some things you want to make sure you do around the house to keep your loved ones safe. And one thing would be consider installing ramps. If there are stairs in and out of the home or stairs down to the garage, get with some local organizations and see about getting a ramp installed to keep them safer. Removing throw rugs. When you go into a home and you work for a home health agency, one of the first thing a physical therapist says is get rid of those throw rugs. They're big tripping hazards. So if your loved one has a lot of throw rugs around, that's something you might want to consider getting up out of the floor so they won't be tripping on those. Another thing to think about is getting rid of excess clutter. Oftentimes people have things in boxes and bags and stacked in the hallway, and they need to have a safe path and a well-lit path to get through the home safely. And that means even in hallways not having things in boxes or stacked along the walls. So making sure that the excess clutter is removed so there are clear pathways. You also may want to go ahead and remove any weapons from the house, dangerous chemicals, check on older medications. And anytime you are able to visit, going through the refrigerator and checking and throwing out old or expired foods or expired medications. Those are some things that you can do while you are there to make the home safer, or perhaps have somebody else help do those for you. You may want to consider hiring a cleaning service. Oftentimes people go visit and they're very concerned that looks like mom or dad just haven't been able to clean the floors, bathrooms, kitchen, anything like that. So it may be something to do to just hire somebody to help with that, to help make sure the home is clean and safe. And we already mentioned going through the refrigerator regularly, especially as people get older, or if they do have dementia, their sense of smell is affected and their judgment is affected. So they may take a food item out that you or I would look at and know for sure we should not eat. But if they can't smell it and see that it smells bad, or they can't look at the expiration date or really understand it, we're at risk of someone eating something that is expired and might make them sick. You also want to make sure you assess driving safety. Is it still safe for your loved one to drive when you're around? Get in a car with them and let them drive you around. There are checklists that you can use. There are some books online that I can tell you about that give you guidelines for seeing if your loved one is actually still safe to drive. That's one of the most difficult things that families deal with, is having a discussion about when it is no longer safe for that person to drive. So that's something you want to assess when you're there, and perhaps get some of these online resources. Now more than ever, it's so much easier to care for someone from a distance because of the technology. So you can install Wi-Fi cameras. You don't have to have those on all the time. And people say, well, that just sounds weird because I don't want to spy on mom or dad. Well, you're not spying, but let's say you've called all day for 2 days and you haven't been able to reach them and you haven't gotten a call back. You can flip those cameras on and just look. And maybe they're sitting in their chair watching television, and maybe they just didn't hear the phone, but they look okay. Or sometimes families have flipped those cameras on and found out from California that a loved one had fallen and was laying in the living room floor in Tennessee, and they were able to call 911. So really consider getting those. You can also install those outdoors, install the video doorbell, so you're able to see who's coming and going from your loved one's house. Is it just UPS, or is it somebody you need to be concerned about? And a lot of those will record. So if anything was to happen, you would have a video recording of that. Wi-Fi door locks are really great too. You can check at night and make sure the doors are locked on your loved one's home from a distance. You don't have to worry about whether or not they might have gone to bed and forgotten to lock the doors. Those will also send you an alert on your smartphone that they've opened that door, and you can check on them. And if they're not supposed to be going anywhere, that lets you know somebody's opening that door and headed out. So you can call and check on them, or have a neighbor check on them. So both of those are just ways to help you be alerted that something's going on. Other smart devices, the Alexa devices or Amazon Show, those are great. The Amazon Show, you can actually turn on and have video chats with your loved one. So if you just want to see their face, make contact with them, you've got that. You can also set reminders on those, like, hey, mom, remember to take your medicine at 10 a.m. or hey, mom, remember you've got a doctor's appointment at 1. So those are just very, very, very valuable things that you can use from a distance. And then GPS devices or apps. If they still use a smartphone, Life 360 is a great little app you can put on the phone where you can always see where they're at, where they went. For teenagers, it's great. You can see how fast they're driving. So that's a great thing. But using those or other GPS devices, the call buttons have a GPS, some smartwatches have that, but just a way to kind of make sure they are where you think they are, or if you can't get in touch with them, being able to check really quickly, assuming they have the device with them, being able to check really quickly can really give you peace of mind. And then you want to take care of yourself. It can be so overwhelming trying to live your life wherever you are and take care of your loved one from a distance. So get all of the education that you can. There are a number of ways to get that through webinars. Our website has a number of webinars housed there. We've got the Caregiver Academy that'll give you a lot of education. Learn about those community resources and what's going on. AgeWell has an outstanding book that they put together. That's a resource guide, and I would encourage you to get that one. Join a support group. Support groups, especially of other long distance caregivers. It's a place where you can talk to other people doing the same thing that you're doing. How do they handle it? How do they manage the fear, the guilt, the anxiety? Maintain healthy relationships with your siblings. Oftentimes when one person is taking on the majority of the caregiving because they live closer and other family members live at a distance, it can create a lot of tension between families. But now more than ever, you all really need to work together. So work really hard to maintain healthy relationships with them. Set boundaries. If you can't be called for every emergency or every situation, you can't hop a plane and fly across the country all the time, then let whoever else is helping you know, these are the things that I can take on from a distance. I'll be glad to help in this way. but can you possibly do some of these other things that require somebody on the ground? And then address caregiver guilt. Many long distance loved ones really beat themselves up that they can't do enough, they can't always be there, and those kinds of things. But there's so many other things you can put in place to help you care for your loved one. And really just talking to someone in a support group, talking with a counselor to deal with that guilt that some long distance caregivers feel, because that can get overwhelming and keep you from being able to make the decisions that you can make that will help your loved one. Alzheimer's Tennessee is all over the state of Tennessee. So if there's anything that we can do for you to help you support your loved one with Alzheimer's or another dementia, whether they're here in Middle Tennessee or across the state, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're here to help you and we'd be happy to do that. I'll be happy to answer questions when we're done. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Remember, if you have any questions, I jotted down a bunch of questions, but please feel free to put those in the chat and we can address those at the end of the webinar. Well, thank you. That was really, really good, Cheryl. Really appreciate that. So next, I'd like to introduce Paula. Paula is a 15-year champion for positive aging and a community educator. She is with AgeWell Middle Tennessee. She is the community liaison to area agencies and groups working to include older adults in all aspects of our community. Paula is also caregiving for her mom and her mother-in-law who are a distance from her. So Paula is she's graciously agreed, thank you so much, Paula,
Sure.
to share her experience caring from a distance. Paula?
Thank you, Nola. And a lot of the information that Cheryl gave were great things that I've already put into place, but I took a lot of notes of things that I am going to start doing that I hadn't thought of before. As Nola said, I'm caring for a mother and a mother-in-law who live in Louisiana. My mother-in-law is in an assisted living facility and my mother still lives independently at age 80 and is actually still working due to economic necessity. She was a divorced single woman who did not work for a number of years. So she is still working, which kind of adds a little bit of burden to our caregiving journey. So I'll tell you just a little bit about how I've handled both of them. My mother-in-law was a nurse and she's a terrible patient and she's very opinionated. And my husband is still very much like becomes a child when he talks about her. So she relies on me more than him. Like if she has a problem, she calls me and wants me to help her. And her and my mother have become friends. And so they tattle on each other. So they will call me and tell me what the other one hasn't done or is not doing to take care of themselves. So it's all part of my journey as a caregiver. But what we have done with my mother-in-law is we did put my husband's name on all of her accounts so that there is someone's on there so we can access it. So I really recommend that to you if you are caregiving from a long distance, that someone else, not just that older adult, is on that form, just in case you need to access it. And we did make sure she had all of her will and all that power of attorney of healthcare in place in case we need it. It was really difficult for her during COVID because she wasn't in assisted living and was basically locked down. And so that I really noticed that had aged her a lot. Even though we would talk to her on the phone, she would not FaceTime us because she couldn't get her hair done and did not want us to see her without her hair done because she's one of those ladies who likes her hair done every week. So really, I would encourage you, if there's a loved one who doesn't want you to FaceTime them or doesn't want to use technology for you to see them, to really make an effort to call them more often. I found that it helped to call more often so I could at least hear her voice and notice any changes. If you do have a relative long distance in a facility such as assisted living, really try to get to know the staff or the names of the people so that when she's talking about someone or complaining about someone, which mine does a lot, you know who they are and what their role is, and that you can feel free to call them and ask the questions of what's going on, what's happening here. It was a great thing for my mom to go to assisted living, and I highly encourage you, if you are considering it, to really visit. For my mother-in-law, she had been living alone out in the country, out in the rural areas. And she has friends now, and like she has coffee with this one, and the bus takes them on trips, and they go have lunch once a week at a new restaurant. And it's almost like it has energized her and rejuvenated her because she's got friends next door. You know, it's almost like living in college where your friends are always there and you can go see your friends. So it's been really good for her. So if that's something that is a challenge for you, long distance, them living alone, really consider assisted living. I know people have in their minds a lot of negative connotations of that, but if you really research and find one that would fit well, it has helped my mother-in-law. It has eased my peace of mind that she wasn't in a house alone, sleeping during the day and staying up all night because she was afraid. So this way it has kind of given me and my husband a peace of mind that she is she still is a night owl, but yet she is engaged with others and not just staying up all night watching TV. So I really encourage that. That has been something that has been good for us. And I also, as a treat for her, I use DoorDash or Uber Eats and sometimes would send a meal to her that was not the assisted living food or not something she would normally have. And so I had never thought of that technology helping with caregiving, but it's been a nice way to get some meals to her and some treats. So that's just a little thing I think about. My mother is a different beast altogether, and I say that very lovingly. She is, I have two brothers who are local to her. I am the oldest child though. And so one of my brothers is he does not think of himself as a caregiver, but he is. He takes her to the store once a week. I apologize, my phone is going off. He takes her to the grocery store. If he cooks on Sunday, he makes her little meals for the week. He pays all her bills online. So that's caregiving. He was like, I'm just cooking and sharing my meal with mom. And I'm like, no, you're preparing her meals for the week. So my younger brother, who is the baby, is there too. He actually lives a lot closer to my mom, but my mom relies heavily on the other brother. And I am noticing some caregiver burnout in him because she is relying on him. So I would encourage you, and what I have done is taken on, I'm kind of like the coach, and I'm kind of like getting them all together and kind of, even though they live in the same town and they have a good relationship, being men, they didn't think to talk to one another. So my baby brother wanted to help and was willing to do things, but my mother has kind of made this other brother the sole caregiver, and he's getting really burned out. And that is hard to watch from a distance because I feel a lot of guilt because I'm not there and my brother is having to carry the burden of it. He is also single with no children, where my other brother has children. But what I have done is tried to create, we have a group text and like we share the information, and both brothers will keep in touch with what's going on or what they're seeing or what they're hearing. And really, I have kind of become the bad guy in a lot of instances because I'm not there, which I feel has helped my brothers. And I am like, no, you need to do this, or no, you need this, or like, y'all tell her I did it. And she has kind of come around to letting me make some of those decisions. We are struggling. I'll be honest, with getting her to prepare for the future. She cries and doesn't want to talk about a will or end of life. And I'm the bad guy. And I'm like, no, we need to have this done because I want to honor your wishes. But in my mind, I'm also thinking I need to make this either easy for the brother who's the primary caregiver that I know she's going to rely on. So really, I recommend try to get all your siblings on the same page. And as Cheryl mentioned about decluttering, every time we go to visit both grandmothers, and if they want to offer something, I tell my children, take it, bring it home, we'll give it to Goodwill, we'll dispose of it, because that will help with the clutter. My mother-in-law in her assisted living apartment is very much likes clutter. So I would encourage you to do that. Our old executive director at AgeWell recommended that to me, that she had used that with her mother, and that has worked really well. And that kind of eases the burden of the others to have to deal with that. I also want to recommend, and something that's worked for me, is when I visit, I try to give my oldest brother a break. Like, no, I'll take you to the store, or no, let me cook. So if you're visiting from a distance and there are siblings who are there, I have found that it has really helped my brother kind of get a break, because even though he's still there and doing everything, that's like, okay, I don't have to worry about her meals this week because Paula's there. She's going to do it, or she's going to go with mom to Target because she left her purse in a buggy at Target once. So she really doesn't like to go alone anymore. So just kind of trying to be that listening ear. I kind of sometimes just let my brother vent about her, and it's of course all loving, and he would always do everything. But sometimes you just need somebody to say, Mom is driving me crazy, or Dad is driving me crazy. And, so to be there, to be that listening ear for them, I think is important from a distance. And also with your loved one, to kind of be that person that like maybe they call on if there is a sibling in town, that you kind of take an active role. And kind of in closing, and I feel like I may have talked really fast, I'm sorry, is to really give yourself some grace, that this is hard. I mean, every day, like my mother-in-law recently had some money stolen from her purse at the assisted living, and she's not sure, but she thinks they may have stolen her Social Security card. So I'm having to put fraud alerts and do those kind of things. And it's just to kind of take a deep breath. Just take a deep breath, step away, take some time for yourself. I also give. I have children. They're older, but I have children still at home. And so it's to give yourself a little bit of grace, take some deep breaths, and know you're not in this alone. State Volunteer Mutual is great to offer these education sessions. Our elder care coach calls if you're interested in talking to someone, but make sure you're getting that support either from a caregiver group, if that's your thing, or if you want to call into us, or just give yourself a little bit of grace. It's hard. It's frustrating at times, and you love your parents so much, but they may drive you crazy. Your siblings may drive you crazy at different times. But give yourself some grace and take those deep breaths. Utilize each other if you're fortunate enough to have siblings or neighbors. We get a lot of calls here at AgeWell from next door neighbors that saying, I'm worried about Miss So-and-so. You think it's okay to call her son in California? And we're like, yes, please. If you know her son, please call him. So utilize people that are there. If your parents are in another state, maybe old neighbors, or if they have a faith community, or some of the things offered by the community. I know my mother is very active in her church, and that's been a kind of a saving grace because people have picked her up and given her rides sometimes or brought her to things. So utilize your community, whether it's your community here to support you or the community where your loved one is to support them. But give yourself some grace and don't forget to take deep breaths. Hopefully we're all going to make it through this, and know there's a lot of us. You're not alone in doing that as well. So utilize your resources and take care of yourselves. So that's my story.
Well, thank you, Paula. That was great, and so many important tips. And I love how you just tied in your personal experience to the information that Cheryl shared with us. I think that's so critical to see how it kind of comes together. I was wondering, it made me think about AgeWell's scam alert. Maybe you can put it in the chat how someone could sign up for that. I think it's a monthly email that goes out, and we focus, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we focus on scams that tend to target elderly people. So if you are caring for someone, it would be really good to be getting those alerts just so you're aware, because these scams change all the time, right? These people would put their...
Unfortunately, they target older adults even more because a lot of times older adults are home alone. So they answer the phone, they may answer the door. They also, we're taught to not be rude to people. So of course, they're not going to hang up on someone like, I just don't answer the phone. And I recommend older adults don't answer the phone if you don't know the number. So definitely that is something to watch out for your loved one far away, is to really make sure that they are not being scammed. And a lot of them are embarrassed or afraid to tell you. But we really need to know, because by knowing more, hopefully we can stop it and help others. So I will put that in the chat. I need to make sure I have the right address. Rochelle, could you possibly help me and type that? I can't remember what the email is off the top of my head. If you wouldn't mind doing that for me, I'd appreciate it.
And Paula, if I can make a comment on that, I will not place myself into the older people being scammed category. However, I've noticed that lately, somehow telemarketers are now able to enter a name and a location. So instead of it showing up as just some number, it now is showing up as Katie Williams, Nashville, Tennessee. And so now you have to look at it and go, wait, do I know a Katie Williams? Is this really a contact in my phone? So they've even taken it to the next level. So even, being aware of that, you can tell them don't recognize a number that you don't know. But when a person's name is popping up like they're in your contacts, you think you know them. So it's even more important now to know your scam alerts
and to really let them know that the electric company and the police are not going to call you to ask for money, that you owe money or you haven't paid a bill, because they're starting to spoof those numbers. And I know the Franklin Police Department has had that issue where it's spoofing their numbers. So really we're really trying to get that education out to older adults, like they're not going to do that. So hang up and look for the real number and call them, don't call back. But unfortunately, it's a huge problem.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you both. I did want to mention again, I briefly touched on the Elder Care Coach phone consultations. So I just wanted to go through that again. The most important thing is just go to eldercarecoach.org and click on sign up. There is an intake form that we ask you to complete when you're signing up. And please know that everything on that intake form is confidential. Any information you provide to AgeWell is used just to inform our care coach, who is a geriatric care professional. And the goal of the phone consultations is to give you a chance to let us know what issues you are dealing with the person, or maybe you're dealing with more than one person that you're calling about, so that our care coach can have information prepared ahead of your scheduled consultation. So you go in, you sign up, you complete the intake form, put a little information about yourself, who you're caring for, what issues you'd like to talk about when you schedule the consultation. We also have a chat feature now. So if it's not convenient for you to talk on the phone, maybe you're at work, maybe by the time you're off work, you're home with the person that you'd like to talk about. So we also have a chat feature. All right, next slide, please. So I just wanted to share with you some of the tests from people who have utilized the Elder Care Coach calls. One of the overarching things is people want to know they're not alone. And Paula mentioned that there are a lot of people caregiving, not something that people tend to talk about, at work. So it's possible that you think you're alone and you're really not. But by using the Elder Care Coach phone consultation or chat consultation, you can get a lot of your questions answered, hopefully reduce your frustration and stress, save you time, and just provide you support. Next slide, please. All right, so if you would just take 1 minute, we're going to launch a poll and ask you to answer a couple of yes or no questions. And question 4 is a longer answer. So if there's anything that you were hoping to hear in the webinar that we didn't address, please feel free to put that in the chat. And again, if you have any questions, go ahead and put those in the chat. It's not too late. All right.
I would like to just add for you guys, I know that sometimes family dynamics are not that great, and sometimes relationship issues come up with family members. So there are resources in the community, like the geriatric care managers and mediation specialists, and even support groups that might help you be able to work through some of that. sometimes we see as our parents age with the children that issues come up from childhood between the siblings. I know in my own instance, when we moved my mother-in-law out of her home, which was a disaster and a clutter-filled home, it really changed the dynamic of the relationship between my husband and his mother. So really, if that is your situation and you feel like you need that, look for some community resources to help you work through that, so you are not doing this alone. Because that's really important, is to have the support of you as well as the care of your loved one.
Yeah, thanks, Paula. All right, so there's your poll. I'll give you a few minutes to respond to those questions. And don't forget, if you have anything you have a question about, put that in the chat.
And
Or
and I highly recommend Cheryl's Silver Alert packet. Those are things that you don't think about. Cheryl was talking to us before about like the make of your car and your license plate. I just was thinking about my own car and I'm like, I don't think I would know what my license plate number on my car is. So that's a really great packet if you do have a parent that is potentially having some Alzheimer's and dementia issues, or even if they're not. I'm thinking I might do one for my mother, still drives. So those are, I think that's a great tool that Cheryl shared that I would love to think on for my friends, as for my mother as well.
Mhm. And since we have a little bit of time, Cheryl, would you mind showing the group the contents of that kit? Because I agree with you, Paula. I think that was excellent. And you're muted, Cheryl.
So this is just, it talks about the Silver Alert. So the first page is going to tell you, I don't know how well you can see it, about the Silver Alert, what it means. And that's where the TBI works with local law enforcement to locate a person with Alzheimer's or dementia that goes missing. Inside, there is a checklist for families on what all they need to have in their kit, how to actually get that together. There is a personal profile form where you go in and do things like height, weight, hair color, eye color, any distinguishing characteristics, moles, scars, tattoos, yes, the year, make, and model of the car, and the tag number. So just everything that you would need to have, emergency contacts, what medications they might be on, anything that would be very, very important should they go missing. And especially things that will help other people locate them. Current photographs is something you don't think about. If you have a child, you take 1,000 photos. People take photos of their pets, but do we take that many current photos of our loved ones? Well, since Christmas, I bet there are a lot of people who haven't taken a photo of mom or dad or grandma or grandpa because, you know, that was Christmas. Well, Christmas was a few months ago. And the TBI really wants photos within the last 6 months. So even making sure you're taking pictures, you know how to get them off of your phone and get those developed and have them handy. There's a guideline in here that talks about why people wander and kind of wandering prevention and wandering warning signs that you might notice if someone is about to wander. There's one on preparation and response. So it talks about what to have ready in case they wander and then what to do next. And then there is a guide or a step-by-step guide on they've gone missing, what are the steps I need to take? And it's kind of a checklist and really guides you through calling the emergency contacts and things to think about. And all of that is in here. So we're super excited to have these available and be able to help families that have a loved one that lives at home that might wander either on foot or by car. So if that's a concern, just reach out to Alzheimer's Tennessee. The Middle Tennessee office is 615-580-4244.
Cheryl, is that silver kit available throughout the country? So if, my mom lives in California. Do you think should I get a kit from you, or would another Alzheimer's association have that?
You might check with groups in California. This is just something that we put together working with state and local officials, but
Okay.
I really know that it would be more for you anyway. So the information
True.
you would get, you'd be fine getting it here because all of the information you would get would be the same. No, not all states have a Silver Alert. So you want to look into that as well.
Okay.
But just having the information handy, all families need to know these things, especially those caring from a distance. We just need to know the answers to these questions, and we don't.
That's true. That's a good point. A couple other things that came up. You mentioned alerting local authorities if you have an elder loved one that lives alone. I'm wondering if police departments, kind of in general across the country, do they have a special division that handles that? Or who, is there somebody that you could ask for, or a department within the police that you might?
Some sheriff's departments actually do. Some sheriff departments have a like a senior outreach service, and that's what I talked about earlier about the home visitation. They go out and visit them and kind of just check up on them. So some sheriff departments have that, and I'm sorry, no, I can't think what the name of that program is, but
It's
but
called
a lot of
SCAN.
them- Yeah, here it is. And there was one over in Knoxville where I came from that was called something different. And it seems like it was like community outreach, something. But yeah, check in with local sheriff's departments and see them. But really that was more about if they went missing, just letting them know,
Oh,
hey,
okay.
yeah, this person might wander. If you see them, please pay attention. Please let us know. So it's just letting them know where they live, who they are, who to contact, and all that. So should they locate that person? Of course, now we have the silver alert, so hopefully more people will complete that, and then also register their loved one with a found program, which is through Medic Alert. And so that gets them the identification jewelry, and that has all of their information as well.
Okay. I have a couple more questions. So speaking of the assurance calls that you mentioned, what agency heads that program?
I've seen that through lots of different agencies. Sometimes it's a volunteer agency. Sometimes that's also the sheriff's department.
Okay.
I have seen those through area agencies on aging and disability. And Paula, who do you know here? I see you nodding.
A lot of the senior centers in the outline
Mhm.
here in out in Davidson, Middle Tennessee will do it as a volunteer or the senior center staff.
Mhm.
Definitely, even if you're in another part of the country, your loved one, I would start with the senior centers or find the senior center, because they may have activities, but they also may have where they call and check on you.
Mhm.
Call and check on the folks.
Okay.
Sometimes they call it friendly visiting
Mhm.
term that they call it. So yeah.
Okay.
And even during COVID, a lot of places that weren't already doing that started it, and a lot of them saw that it was so needed that they've kept it. So there may be even more of those now than there used to be.
Right.
Okay. One last question. In terms of the booklets or checklists that are available for assessing driving safety, where would someone get that from?
The one that I like to use is called At the Crossroads, and it's put out by the Hartford Insurance Company. And it is a wonderful booklet that just goes through how to have this conversation with your loved one, what to look for. There's actually a checklist in there. And then there's a contract where you can have a conversation with your loved one way in advance, and you decide together, if it gets to the point where it's no longer safe for me to drive, I give my daughter Nola permission to have this conversation with me and take my keys, take my car. So you decide that up front. So it's really just a great conversation guide. Other than that, there are all kinds of things you can Google. That's just a safe driving checklist. And it'd be things like, do they change, just like when you take a driver's test, do you change lanes properly? Are you obeying traffic signals? Do they get lost? Can they get around? Things like that.
Okay.
Nola, even though you guys are local and your loved one might live somewhere else, our directory of services, we have several places listed that do online assessments for driving, listed in our transportation section. Like the AAA has a foundation that has one. AARP has different classes as well. The National Highway Safety Board. So those would be national things if your loved one is not in Middle Tennessee. But even you as a person in Middle Tennessee, and the Hartford is great. They have a lot of great resources for older adult drivers.
Paula, since you brought the directory up, do you want to take a minute or two and just give everyone on the webinar a background about the directory and what they can find in there?
The directory actually started as a graduate program of students at Fisk University, which is a small HBCU program in Nashville, and has kind of grown from about 10 pages to this book. In it, we do, and it is impartial, we do have sponsors to help us get printed, but we have everything from activities to insurance questions to housing questions, health. A lot of it is Middle Tennessee based in terms of the resources, but it's got great information on like just questions to ask, things to think about. And there are some national resources in here as well. They are available free at the public libraries in Middle Tennessee, or stopping by our office, or we do mail them for older adults who can't get out. But we have things to ask in legal and veterans, and a lot of it is, some of it is national based, so it's not just Middle Tennessee specific. So I do encourage you, if you're caring for a loved one, even if they're not local, to grab one of these, because there's some good thought-provoking things that might give you ideas of who to call where they live in terms of having some of the similar agencies.
Great.
And it is also online on our website as well. If you're more of a tech person than like a hard copy book, it is on our website at agewelltn.org.
Great. Thank you, Paula. All right. Well, I don't see any other questions in the chat, so that will conclude our webinar. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you, Katie, for supporting your caregiving employees. And thank you, Cheryl and Paula. This is great information. And please, if you have any questions, if you didn't get them in the chat and you think of something later, feel free to reach out to us or go to the website, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.